For decades, Iran has possessed one of the most powerful strategic weapons on Earth. Not a missile, not a drone, not even its navy, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil passes through this narrow stretch of water. Every crisis, every tanker attack, every threat to close the strait sends energy markets into panic. Whoever can disrupt Hormuz holds enormous leverage over the global economy. Now the United States and Iraq are trying to change that, moving Iraqi oil north and west across Iraq toward Turkey, Jordan, and the Mediterranean, instead of south through the Persian Gulf. If it works, Iran loses one of its biggest strategic advantages, but the pipelines have to cross Iraq, and much of that territory is influenced by powerful Iran-backed militias. This isn't just a story about pipelines, it's a story about a hidden war over energy, influence, and who controls the Middle East. Before we get into it, if you're finding value in these breakdowns, hitting like and subscribing to Reach Defense Media genuinely helps us keep putting this kind of coverage out. We'd really appreciate it. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and Arabian Sea. Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and much of Saudi Arabia's production have historically depended on it to reach global markets. Every confrontation with Iran triggers the same question. What happens if Hormuz closes? Oil prices spike, shipping insurance explodes, global markets panic. That vulnerability has pushed governments toward alternatives for decades. Iraq is at the center of the biggest proposals. One route would move southern Iraqi crude north through the Basra-to-Mediterranean pipeline toward Turkey and the Mediterranean. Another would export through Jordan to the Red Sea port of Aqaba. There are also discussions about restoring older routes towards Syria's Mediterranean coast. The objective is giving Iraq multiple export options, so one waterway can no longer hold its economy hostage. Washington strongly supports this. Every barrel reaching global markets without passing through Hormuz reduces Iran's strategic leverage. If Iraq gains reliable alternative routes, Iran loses one of its most powerful pressure points against regional states in the West. Then comes reality. Pipelines don't travel through empty deserts, they travel through territory. And in Iraq, territory is political. Large parts of the country contain Popular Mobilization Forces factions closely aligned with Tehran that retain significant autonomy despite formally being part of Iraq's security structure. A pipeline doesn't need to be destroyed completely to become unreliable. Repeated attacks, sabotage, and threats against workers can discourage investment just as effectively as blowing up the infrastructure entirely. Oil infrastructure is fixed, stretches hundreds of miles, passes through remote areas, and can't relocate when threatened. Protecting every mile is enormously difficult. Even small attacks halt flows for weeks. Baghdad wants investment and higher revenues, but simultaneously has to balance relations with both Washington and Tehran. Push too hard toward the US, and Iran-backed factions increase pressure, move too close to Tehran, and foreign investors get nervous. Iraq is perpetually caught between two competing powers. Ironically, Iran may not even need to physically destroy these pipelines to win. If investors believe infrastructure could be attacked, if insurers raise premiums, if energy companies become reluctant to commit billions, the project stalls before a single shot is fired. Sometimes uncertainty is enough. That doesn't mean these projects are doomed. Iraq has already moved to expand exports through Turkey, and even partial success would make its energy network considerably more resilient. But pipelines alone won't eliminate Hormuz's importance. A substantial share of Gulf exports would still depend on the strait for years regardless. The real battle isn't about oil, it's about leverage. Iran has spent decades reminding the world that disrupting Hormuz could shake the global economy. Iraq and its Western backers are now trying to reduce that vulnerability. If new corridors succeed, Iran loses part of its strategic advantage. If Iran-aligned militias can intimidate investors and disrupt infrastructure without ever closing the strait, Tehran preserves that leverage anyway. That's why this is one of the most important geopolitical stories in the Middle East right now. Not a competition over pipelines, a competition over influence, state authority, energy security, and the future balance of power across the region. Ensure you subscribe to Reach Defense Media for more content like this.